Well, as I say, the breaking news of the night is that Donald Trump's illegal tariffs are gone, thanks to a ruling of the United States Court of International Trade. Futures trading is now soaring tonight in the expectation of an explosively positive reaction by the stock market tomorrow when the world will reset itself around the restoration of law and order in international trade and the crushing of the Trump tariffs and resultant personal worldwide humiliation of Donald Trump. The Trump tariffs were always illegal and unconstitutional, and you heard that on this program every time we covered Donald Trump's comments about tariffs, including very much during the presidential campaign when the campaign press corps never, ever reported to voters that the Trump proposed tariffs during the campaign were completely illegal and unconstitutional. The campaign press corps never reported to voters that those proposals were constitutionally insane, and the person pronouncing those proposals at those Trump rallies was constitutionally out of his mind just based on what he was saying about tariffs alone. The campaign press corps completely failed the American voter on this issue, with American voters just discovering tonight from the International Court of Trade just how illegal and unconstitutional the Trump tariffs always have been. The United States Court of International Trade, which has exclusive jurisdiction over cases involving tariff disputes, has ruled unanimously that when it comes to tariffs, Donald Trump does not have, quote, unbounded authority, and the court sets aside the challenged tariffs. The court gave the plaintiffs suing the Trump administration even more than they expected. The plaintiffs include 12 states with Democratic governors who sued, arguing that the Trump tariffs are unconstitutional and illegal, and asked the court for at least a temporary injunction, temporarily blocking the tariffs. But the court went all the way and delivered a full and final ruling in the case, granting what the court calls a summary judgment against Donald Trump and all of his tariffs. So as of this hour tonight, it is no longer legal at any port of entry in the United States for a United States Customs Service to collect a single dollar of Trump tariffs. Civil lawsuits like this seldom have such total and complete and final victories just 2 weeks after the court heard arguments in the case. Victories in this case for plaintiffs at this stage of this kind of litigation are very unusual, but here we are. And as I've been reporting to you literally for years now, there are few things more clear in law than Congress's complete authority over tariffs. The Court of International Trade said in its opinion that even if Congress wanted to give Donald Trump power over tariffs, it would be unconstitutional to do so. Quote, an unlimited delegation of tariff authority would constitute an improper abdication of legislative power to another branch of government. Donald Trump's illegal tariffs were based on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977. And today, finally, the Court of International Trade said what I've been saying since the day Donald Trump invoked that law to support his tariffs. Quote, any interpretation of the International Emergency Economic Powers Act that delegates unlimited tariff authority is unconstitutional. The court rejected Donald Trump's claim of a national emergency to justify his tariffs, saying the mere incantation of national emergency cannot, of course, sound the death knell of the Constitution. And that's what Donald Trump is trying to do. He's trying to kill the Constitution of the United States in a different way every day. He tried and failed, thanks to the Court of International Trade, to sound the death knell of the Constitution by stealing Congress's exclusive power over tariffs. And in a 49-page ruling co-authored by 3 judges of the Court of International Trade in New York City, Donald Trump's attempts to kill the Constitution this time have failed. Judge Gary Katzmann was appointed by President Obama. Judge Jane Rustani was appointed by Republican President Ronald Reagan. Judge Timothy Reif was appointed by Republican President Donald Trump. And those three judges unanimously agreed to every word in tonight's breaking news opinion that there is nothing in American law that can make Donald Trump's tariffs legal. Two sets of plaintiffs brought cases to the Court of International Trade, and in their unanimous opinion tonight, the court said the question in the two cases before the court is whether the International Emergency Economic Powers Act of 1977 delegates these powers to the president in the form of authority to impose unlimited tariffs on goods from nearly every country in the world. The court does not read the International Emergency Economic Powers Act to confer such unbounded authority and sets aside the challenged tariffs imposed thereunder. For Donald Trump's benefit, though he, of course, could never actually read a single page of a court opinion, but mostly for the benefit of the United States Supreme Court, the trade experts on the Court of International Trade wrote a brief history of international trade right in their opinion, and a brief history of international trade law for Donald Trump's Supreme Court justices to study because they know very little about international trade law. When Donald Trump, no doubt, appeals this case all the way up to the judges on the Supreme Court who he believes owe him their permanent loyalty. The trade court identified three different kinds of tariffs Donald Trump was illegally imposing and ruled against each of them, calling each of them illegal and unconstitutional. The court referred to tariffs imposed on countries to indirectly force them to somehow stop the flow of fentanyl around the world and other illicit drugs that are illegal, because tariffs cannot legally be used to leverage the behavior of other governments on issues other than regulated international trade. The court wrote, a tax deals with a budget deficit by raising revenue. A dam deals with flooding by holding back a river. But there is no such association between the act of imposing a tariff and the unusual and extraordinary threats that the trafficking orders purport to combat. The trafficking orders do not deal with their stated objectives. Rather, as the government acknowledges, the orders aim to create leverage to deal with those objectives. That use is impermissible, not because it is unwise or ineffective, but because Section 1701 does not allow it. The court laid out the legal specifics, striking down all of what Donald Trump calls his reciprocal tariffs. And throughout the opinion, the court was very clear that Congress would have the authority to impose any of these tariffs, but the president simply does not have that legal authority. In the same sense that the president does have the power to pardon people convicted of federal crimes, which Donald Trump is doing in the most corrupt manner in history, but Congress does not have the power to pardon people convicted of federal crimes. These distinctions in presidential and congressional power have always been easy and simple for people to understand, and no one has ever disputed them, just as no one has ever imagined prior to Donald Trump that a president has the authority to raise or lower tariffs. The court went through a painful recitation of all the tariffs Donald Trump has threatened to impose and then reduced and then postponed, saying every one of those decisions was made illegally. The court explained that a summary judgment is the only possible way in this case that this case can be resolved and needs to be resolved now. And this court explained the standards for a summary judgment, saying the court shall grant summary judgment if the movement shows that there is no genuine dispute as to any material fact, and the movement is entitled to judgment as a matter of law. That is a very high bar, but Donald Trump's constitutional illiteracy easily delivered a summary judgment to the states and other plaintiffs to end all of the Trump tariffs and not allow them to be collected at any port of entry anywhere in the United States. The court, of course, cited James Madison, writing in the Federalist Papers on the importance of separation of powers, and said an unlimited delegation of tariff authority would be unconstitutional. The court said, quote, The president's assertion of authority here has no meaningful limiting standards, essentially enabling him to impose any tariff rate he wants on any country at any time for virtually any reason. The court stopped that madness tonight. It's over. The Trump tariff madness ends now. The court said Donald Trump's attempt to use our international trade balance of payments with countries around the world as a reason for a president to impose tariffs was illegal and unconstitutional. Donald Trump has lost in court many times before, most notably in the 34 guilty verdicts returned against him by a jury of his peers in a criminal case in Manhattan last year. And the judgment against Donald Trump by the Court of International Trade will now take its place among those legal cases in which Donald Trump has lost, and lost decisively on every single point that Donald Trump raised in the court. There is not a single word that was said by Donald Trump's lawyers justifying his tariffs that was accepted by a single judge on the Court of International Trade, including the Trump-appointed judge who joined this unanimous opinion. And so tomorrow, when Donald Trump stands before a microphone and lies to the American people about his tariffs, it will be another worldwide humiliation day for Donald Trump.